And I want to move into our 1 o'clock segment and speaker right now, Nicole Dunbar. Nicole, how are you doing here today?
I'm doing amazing. So excited to be here. Yay.
Yay, I am so excited to have you on. And Nicole is going to be sharing with us time-saving search strategies for the experience-rich professional. And before we get into that discussion, Nicole, I'm trying to remember if someone introduced us, if we started interacting. No, it was the last LinkedIn Live-a-thon. My mental Rolodex was kind of turning, and I was like, oh, I remembered. The last LinkedIn Live-a-thon, I was looking for speakers in the last segment, and I said, who do you know who's available? Did someone suggest you, or did you see it and jump in? Do you remember?
Yeah, so we have a shared connection that pinged me on LinkedIn and said, hey, Brenda Meller's looking for speakers. And I actually had an event that afternoon. So I was kind of already preparing to speak to folks in career transition. And I'm like, okay, I got 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so that's how it happened. And it was really awesome. So I'm glad I had a chance to do that.
Well, I'm glad to bring you back here today so you get a fuller time slot in the presentation. And we're here today for a LinkedIn Live-a-thon for experience-rich job seekers. And just remind everyone who's on the session here today, we did have a couple of little hiccups, but the good thing is I'm going to, in the magic of post-production, I'm going to string this all together and keep it as one clip, but I'm also going to clip out every speaker's presentation. If you join my VIP email list by going to mellermarketing.com/subscribe, I will send you the playback links, including Nicole's presentation that we're going to do here next. So with that said, Nicole, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, and I'm going to take myself off of video, but I'll still be in the StreamYard, but that way we can have the emphasis on you, Nicole. If you ask the audience questions or towards the end, I'll come back on camera. Does that sound okay to you?
Sounds good.
Perfect. All right, Nicole, the floor is over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's such a pleasure to be here with you all. For those that I am meeting for the first time, my name's Nicole Dunbar. I'm a certified life coach. I'm a career and business coach, and I'm the founder of Congruency International. And I think it's helpful to share a little bit of context about my background because I believe it will provide a stage for why I'm giving you the information that I am going to be providing. And so over the past 10 years, I've had the opportunity to work with literally thousands of people that are in career transition. As of last year, well over 1,100 people one-on-one in career transition over that time period of years. And there's no way that you talk to so many people that are going through the process of career transition that you don't start to see certain patterns that are happening for people. And for me, just the way I think in numbers, I think in pictures, and I'm just kind of that a little bit more analytical in that way, that I can start to see if we can predict some simple behaviors that stop most people at different stages in the career transition process and start to solve for that on the front end. What happens is the time it takes to go from I don't know how to do this job search thing to, oh my goodness, I just said yes to the dress, starts to reduce 50% of the time, 70% of the time that somebody has taken. So I've had people that I've had the chance to work with that had been looking for a year, 2 years. And after we just started to really streamline and hone in on what the issues were in their job search, cut away all of the fluff, cut away all of the things that aren't necessary, cut away all of the strategies that worked 10 years ago or 20 years ago when they last did a job search, or whatever the situation is, cut away all of the things that work generally, but do not work for their type of role. We were able to get them to their next role in a fraction of a time, literally eye-popping time landings for roles. And I realized that this is something that if I could share this with more people, we'd be able to see more people land. And so I'm going to take a couple of nuggets from that kind of philosophy, just kind of giving you all that background, and now kind of share my subject today. As Brenda said, and you see it on the screen here, it's about time-saving search strategies for the experience-rich professional. If I were to tell you what my sweet spot is, it is helping identify career transition strategies that help people land their next job faster, with less stress, and at a higher salary than they ever thought possible. And so I've got really 4 topics, and I like to kind of have a conversation back and forth. I know I won't be able to see all of the chat immediately, but I do encourage you all to be responding to each other. And I know Brenda will be sharing some of the comments as well, and you'll be really active in the chat. But I hope that you'll start to share some of this as you're going through. The first topic that I want to tell you about or my first talking point is don't be Alice, right? So if you're looking to really streamline the amount of time it's taking to land your next role, You don't want to be Alice. Now, what do I mean by Alice, right? Now, many of you, if not everybody here, has probably heard or read or seen the book, the movie, the cartoon Alice in Wonderland, right? Lewis Carroll's famous children's literature on this young woman who falls into a hole and ends up in this world called Neverland, right? Or Underland? Well, Wonderland. There's a few different versions of the movie and book I'm thinking about right now. And in this movie or book, Alice meets all of these very odd characters as she's walking through this world that she has never been in, and everything is upside down. And one of the characters she meets while she is lost on a path is called the Cheshire Cat. And this cat is talking to her, and she's asking the cat for directions. And she basically says to the cat, "Can you please just tell me where to go?" And the cat says, "Well, that all depends on where you want to be." And Alice basically says to this cat, "Oh, well, wherever." And he says to her, "Just keep walking. You'll eventually end up wherever." And, we listen to that story and you kind of laugh and you realize, well, okay, I guess that's dumb, but it's kind of true. If you don't care where you're going to end up, you can just keep walking and you will end up somewhere, right? And what I find when I start talking with folks in career transition is that many times, one of the very first things that will absolutely bog down the job search is having a lack of clarity about the actual job target, job title, and possibly in some instances, the industry that makes sense for you in this season of your career transition. In fact, I actually went as far because I do regularly offer throughout the month different workshops from my social media network. I started it as a result of 2020 and all of the things that we were all dealing with. And I realized that the things that I was doing for my corporate clients and some of my private clients, I wanted to really share that with the community at large that has been in career transition. So actually, we'll tell you about an event I have coming up later on this month. But ultimately, as I was going into these events, I started to ask the question, how many people have crystal clear on their job target? And again, I can't see your comments right now, but I'm going to ask you right now in the chat, if you haven't already shared this, for those that feel comfortable and free to share, go ahead and list what are the job targets that you're going after right now. And I'm just going to give you a chance to kind of share that for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's good for you to get comfortable with saying out loud the type of role or types of roles that you're targeting. And number two, you never know who is in the chat that might actually have a similar interest and could start to do some networking. I know Brenda's the queen of getting people together for networking. So this is something that I'm sure she'll make opportunities for that to happen as well. Awesome. I see some comments coming through already.
Nicole,
excellent.
we're hidden. I'm so sorry. We have to you have to go over top of them now because it's a long list.
That's okay. That's okay. No problem. No problem. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. So you all continue to do that in the chat as you're going through. But ultimately, the idea is getting crystal clear about what your job target is. When I started to ask that question in the beginning of my workshops, I started to realize that 60 to 70% of the people on average, and I'm talking about hundreds of people over a 3-month period, that they weren't crystal clear. It was a little blurry. And I'm going to tell you, it is hard to hit a target that you can't identify. In fact, to a certain extent, I see some of the folks that have been with me before. Good to see Cheryl and others that are coming through. But I mean, I'll just say this very quickly. It's very difficult to actually hit a target that you can't see. It really is. It's actually almost impossible to hit a target that you can't see or identify. In fact, if I can tell you quite clearly why this is important for those of you that are going through career transition, perhaps for the first time, and perhaps it's not something that you've done in a little while, it's because so many times, dependent upon the role that you're targeting, where you're going to go to find that job, the job search strategies that you're going to use are going to be very different, right? Point and case. Can you understand? I'm sure you all can understand. I think one of the first ones that came up was somebody that was looking in the event management space. I hope you can understand that there's a very different strategy and approach that one might take to a job that is an entry-level event coordinator versus a director of events or VP of events and programming for a global multinational company. Those roles pay differently. Those roles will be advertised in different places. The strategies that one might use to find one of those jobs versus the other may be very different. For that first one, the event coordinator, you can probably get that off of Indeed, maybe LinkedIn, some job board, You could possibly even find that at your local coffee shop on one of those community boards. Like it's a different place that you're going to find that job. That VP of global events and programming, that might be with a recruiter. That might be happening through networking. That might be happening through very specific communities where those sorts of jobs are posted or discussed. Right. And so everything is predicated upon what sort of roles that you're targeting. So I'm going to ask you to evaluate what you just put into the chat there. If you put into the chat an area or a function, but you haven't necessarily put the job title or titles that you're targeting, is it possible that you could be a little bit of Alice right now? Right. So I encourage you just to think through that. So that's number one. I want to invite you not to be Alice, because so much of your job search will get so much simpler if you will be clear on the types of roles. How you put your materials together will also be influenced by that. Okay, so number one, we talked about don't be Alice. And I love what Bill said, the speaker that was before me. I was listening to him and I was so virtually like high-fiving him because I literally heard him saying so many things that I could absolutely echo. That clarity about the job search, the clarity about the targets is so important, because that's going to be important for you to language to the hiring manager, to the HR professional or recruiter that's going to be presenting you to the hiring manager as to why you're an obvious choice for their open positions. Okay, so let me keep going. So we've talked about don't be Alice. Number two, make numbers your friend. Number two, this is your second strategy, time-saving strategy for those of you, my experienced rich job seekers. Make numbers your friend. Now, for some of you, you've been in workshops with me before. We've kind of met somewhere along the way. I saw a couple of familiar faces there in the audience. So some of you know that I think in numbers, I think in pictures, and this is going to be a working session. I'm not just going to be a talking head here. So if you've got a place to take notes, hopefully most of you do, I'm going to invite you to take some notes right now. And this is going to be probably more appropriate for those that are actively in job search right now. But if you're thinking about it, if you're preparing to go into job search, because according to the metrics, north of 40% of North Americans, specifically folks in the US, professionals, are contemplating a career transition of some type within the next 6 months, right? That's what the numbers say. You know, I've seen stats that are even higher than that, but let's just stick with the lower number for conservative reasons right now. So if it is on the mind of many people, this idea of shifting and revisiting what they do for work and how they go about doing it, understanding some of the ways you can measure whether or not you're successful could be beneficial. I'm going to give you a little taste of some of that I do with my clients that I'm working with. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do, for those of you that are in career transition right now, I'd like you to think about, on average, how many jobs you're putting, how many job applications you're submitting on a weekly basis. And while you're thinking about that, again, I hope you have your own notepad somewhere that you can take some notes here. And so the first number I'm going to ask you to really be looking at is, every week since I've started my job search, on average, how many jobs am I applying for on a weekly basis? That's number one. The next number I'm going to ask you to do is kind of like an extrapolation of that, right? Since I've started my job search, overall, how many jobs have I applied to? Just roughly, how many jobs overall have I applied to? All right. Now, the third number that you're going to put down is, of the jobs that I have applied to, what percentage, or how many, let's start with this one. This will be simpler. How many have called me back for a first round phone screen? Now, just to be clear, this is, you submitted your resume to an open position either on the company's website or on LinkedIn job board, on Indeed job board, one of those, and somebody saw it, saw your resume, responded to you via phone or email or messaging and said, we'd love to schedule a phone screen or an interview or a Zoom meeting or whatever the next step for them would be based on your resume. How many times has that happened? Giving you a little bit of time. I know this is a little bit of math here I'm asking some of you to do. And let's just stick with those three numbers for right now. Do you know that if you have a basic understanding of your numbers, your metrics in job search, that you can start to assess the effectiveness of what it is that you're doing at a very high level, which can help guide you into how you should be adjusting what you're doing moving forward. Okay, so let's just run some sample numbers here. So if you said to me, Nicole, I've been applying to 2 jobs a week for the past month, right? So 2 times 4, 4 weeks in a month, that's 8 jobs. Over the past month, I've applied to 8 jobs. Let's actually make it a little bit longer. Let's say over the past year, on average, I've applied to 2 jobs a week. And I'm going to use my calculator because I have no shame, right? So 1 second. So 2 jobs a week times 52 weeks, right? That's 52 weeks in a year. So I have applied to just over 100 jobs in the past year. And of those 100 jobs, 104 jobs, I actually have had 5 callbacks, right? So I'm going to divide 5. I want a percentage. What percentage of the jobs that I've applied for have actually called me back? In that example I just gave, I have a 5% response rate. Now, for some of you, you might be thinking, okay, what does that mean? Why do I care about that? Now, remember at the beginning, I shared with you that I've had the opportunity to work with well over 1,000 people one-on-one in career transition. There's no way that you're going to work with that many people and not see certain patterns. And I'm just going to share with you, and these are numbers that are effective as of the end of 2019, early 2020. It actually gets even better as we move into 2021 and beyond that. But ultimately, a full-time job search, I don't even concern myself with a candidate that is getting a minimum of 10% response rate to their applications. Now, what does that mean to you, right? What that actually means, and let me check my time. Okay, we're doing okay for time. I've got just 2 more topics to share, and it'll be quick, and I want to leave time for questions. But what that means to you ultimately is that a full-time job search, most of the time when you're applying for jobs, you're going to hear crickets. You might very well hear, we don't want you. You might find out that the position closed. You might even find out that somebody that is not qualified as you, that does not have the experience, the education, the training, or the skills that you have, got the job because they're so-and-so's nephew, and they can't show up to Thanksgiving dinner unless their nephew has a job. What does that mean? There are so many things in career transition that we have absolutely no control over. So the energy that we're investing into the things that we have no control over, instead of honing in on the 10 to 20% response rate that we are getting and adjusting as much as we can, is really where we might have the missed opportunity. And so if you're allowing the fact that the vast majority of the time you're not hearing anything to weigh you down, that could really be bogging down your job search overall. Because how many of you know that the job search is energetic, right? It is very emotionally draining to be doing this job search thing, right? It impacts what we feel about our value as human beings, just because of how we are conditioned, particularly in the Western world, about our value and our value as an individual being so connected to what we do as opposed to who we are. That's a whole other topic. So we don't have time for that one today, but thinking about those sorts of things. So I really love to help my candidates and my clients that I work with really hone in on what they can control, managing their emotional and energetic state, and focusing on their results that they're getting and how to tweak it. If when you do your numbers, you're getting less than 10% response, then that's indicating that something about your resume, your presentation, and the qualifications that you are showing for the jobs you're applying to is off. It's off, right? Because a minimum 10% response is telling me that the resume you're putting out there in the marketplace is working, number one. And number two, what you are actually applying for, you're qualified for. Right? So that's the next thing, making numbers your friend. And then there's a few other metrics that I take my clients through that help us even hone in even further on where the process is breaking down. But that's a good one that if we never speak, each of you can take that from this session. See, I've got just a minute or 2 more. So I'll just share this one. And this one actually segues nicely into the one I just mentioned. Know what works. That's number 3. So we said, don't be Alice. Number 2 is make numbers your friend. And number 3 is know what works, right? What is going to work for you? There are certain strategies. If you are an experienced, rich job seeker, and again, I heard Bill say this, so I feel like he just took that whole part from me. I don't even need to go into detail on it because he really shared some really important things that I want to just highlight. one of the things that is going to work best for most experience-rich job seekers is going to be networking. It works for everybody, but particularly for those that are north of 40, 50, 60, because you have more professional experience than others. You know more senior managers and VPs. You know more directors. Just because your kid or your grandkid might have a bigger Instagram following, that doesn't mean that they have anybody that's in a decision-making position. So don't confuse social networking with your professional network. So I invite you to really think about, who do I know that is a decision maker or connected to a decision maker for the type of role that, because I'm no longer Alice, I'm crystal clear that I actually want. And the type of company, again, because I'm not Alice, I did the work, I did the research that is going to be appropriate for my next type of role. So getting clarity around that will help you have a more effective networking strategy than the spray and pray networking, which who has time for that? That's what takes 6 months or a year. If you're clear, your networking doesn't take 6 months or a year. It takes 6 weeks to 2 months, right? So that's the next thing, knowing what works. Networking works. Contracting to hire works. Contract roles, especially in this market right now, you all, certain roles are very appropriate for contracting, and very easy to get a nice response to that. Boomerang works, right? That's going back to a company that you worked with earlier on in your career at a higher level, right? That's going to work for some clients, for some candidates very well, depending upon how you left that company and the sort of relationships that you had there, whether they do rehiring. So that's another one that works. The fourth and final one that I'm going to mention to you today is knowing yourself. And I'm just going to leave it here and open it up for questions. I might only have just a couple of minutes of questions. I want to honor the schedule here. 5 items that I'm going to ask you to assess for you as an experience-rich job seeker. And I remember I was listening into one of the sessions earlier today, and I heard the speakers talk about the fact that ultimately everybody's going to land. It just may be a matter of time. But the way you reduce it is to understand what is the thing that might not necessarily be working to your benefit. Is it your skills? Do you need to update your skills? Is that the issue based on what the market is asking for today for the type of role you're targeting? The second thing you may want to look at, is it your materials? Right? Is your resume, your LinkedIn profile, the marketing materials that you're using, presenting and making it crystal clear to the hiring manager or the recruiter that you are clearly qualified for the role that you're applying for? Don't make them guess or figure it out, because they're not going to, they're going to guess wrong. The third thing, is it your preparation? Are you walking into interviews unprepared, unaware of how to appropriately interview, how to present yourself, even what the company does, right? Number 4, is it your effort? In the example I gave you when I was running the numbers, I was talking about 2 applications a week. If you're my client, we're doing so much more than that. We're talking about anywhere, if you're working full time, I'd like you to be doing at least 5 job applications on a weekly basis every single week. And if you're not working, there's going to be even more that we would be talking about based on what your goals and your target are, right? And again, there's some adjustment there, but ultimately, we can either get there in a year or get there in 2 or 3 months. And it all depends on the amount of work you're willing to put in. And then the 5th and final thing, particularly for this audience, but everybody, is the issue your mindset? Is it the way that you're thinking about the job search? Is it the way that you're thinking about your skill set? Is it the way you're thinking about your age, right? Is it any of those things? Because ultimately, you can have the best skills in the world, but if every time you go into an interview, you are already assuming that they are going to not choose you because you are whatever the age is that you've decided is no longer whatever the headlines are saying it is, then I guarantee that nobody can help you if you have already decided that you're going to go in there feeling that they're not going to choose you because of your age. I could tell so many stories, but I don't have time for that today. But those are the things. So if I just had to recap it, number 1, don't be Alice. Number 2, make numbers your friend. Number 3, know what works for a job search strategy standpoint. And number 4, know yourself. And that is what I have for you today.
Wow, that was wonderful. I mean, if we were in person, I would say round of applause, Nicole. I mean, I love so many things about your presentation, the advice, the strategies, your positive, inspirational approach. I also, as a host, I appreciated how I heard you saying, I know I've got to wrap soon, because I always get a little bit of panic, like they know I'm going to come in, right? Like I don't want to interrupt, when you're coming in there, but so many great pieces of advice that were in there. If you guys have any questions, you can drop those into chat right now. while I'm waiting to see if there's any questions, I see Michelle is in the background in the green room. Michelle, can you give me a thumbs up? Is it okay if I bring you up on camera real quick? All right, we're just going to do a quick audio check. Michelle, can you see and hear us?
I can see and hear you. Hi, Nicole.
Wonderful. Hi. All right, Michelle, I'm going to pull you off of screen right now. We'll bring you back on in just a few minutes, okay?
Okay.
Perfect. All right, great. And that's a little audio check. As we're kind of trying to do this as one single event throughout the day, it's important to make sure I've got the next person queued up and keep on going over there. So let's see. I think we had a couple of comments coming in during your talk here today and some feedback as well. Linda saying really great advice, enjoyed it. Lisa, I so agree with you. Mindset is so important. And Nicole, thank you for focusing on that. Any advice for people that are struggling with mindset and maybe they're in this funk of being told no and they're feeling like age discrimination is an issue? What would you say to those folks?
Yeah, I love this. I'm going to tackle the second question first. And I have an event that I do, and I'm actually hosting it next week. It's called Over 50 Job Search Tips. And it's this idea that and I'm not interested in gaslighting anybody about age discrimination because it is real. It is real. I would love to be in a world as a woman who's an immigrant, who lives in the South, who is educated in the North, who is of African descent. I would love to say that there's no discrimination, but this isn't Candyland. This is Earth, right? And so discrimination is real, number one. However, when I hear age discrimination, I always ask, is it really discrimination or are you actually truly overqualified? If you're applying for a job that you could have done 20 years ago in your sleep and you're bringing all your experience, your education, and your training for a job that requires 3 years and you've got 20, you're overqualified, sir. You're overqualified, ma'am. And you cost more, and appropriately so. Right? Is it discrimination or are they concerned that you're not teachable and coachable? And is it true? Right? Can anybody tell you anything? Or have you decided, because I've done it this way for the last 20 years, this is gosh darn how I'm going to do it and I'm not going to change now. No one wants to manage that person, not me.
Good point. Good point. So one more question here, and then I think we've got to wrap up. This is from Kim. How many applications did you say that they should be applying for each week if you're unemployed?
I did not say. You've got to come to the workshop for that. So I will tell you that at least if you are working, at least 5. What I don't want to see is 50 because there's no way you're putting quality resumes out there if you're doing 50 a week. Not even possible.
Okay.
The event will be on my LinkedIn within the hour. We didn't have a chance to get it up there yet, but it'll be up there for you all to attend if it works for your schedule.
Okay, perfect. Did you send it to me? Do you want me to pull it up on screen?
I did not send it, but I will. I'd love to.
Okay. Yeah, if you can, and then I'll add it into the playback link for those people that are joining us a little bit late or that want to get access to the playback. And by the way, I have your LinkedIn profile up on screen here. Nicole, are you open to accepting invitations from people that are watching the session here today?
I would love that. And if you do come, I do have a little gift for the folks that are here. I've put aside over the next 30 days, a period of a number of one-on-ones for folks that would like to do a consultation with a little bit of a strategy assessment. And they just need to tell me that they were at the LinkedIn Live, Brenda Meller's LinkedIn Live. Send me a message when you connect with me, telling me that, and I'll make sure that you get one of the spots. There's only 20. They will probably go pretty fast, but I'd love to be able to spend some time and just talk about your strategy. There's no reason for a job search to take 2 years or 6 or 9 months or 12 months. It's not true. I've seen it way too many times. On average, it can happen much faster, especially in this market if we're working a strategy.
Yeah, I love it. And I think having a strategy is so important and so great advice here today, Nicole. So thank you. So guys, remember when you invite her to connect, mention in your note in the invitation that you saw her on today's LinkedIn Live-a-thon.
Yes.
If there was a point that is going to be memorable forever for you, I remember like the Don't Be Alice. And I was like, who is Alice? I'm like, oh, that's right. The Alice in Wonderland. Remember when Alice said, where do I go? I don't know where I want to go, but how do I get there? Like, remember that point. I'm going to remember that forever. The Don't Be an Alice type of a point. So Nicole, thank you so much. As we wrap up here today, any final comments, anything you'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I will say is be encouraged. It can happen. I think if you can anchor the emotions of this in real metrics that you can measure whether this is working. We can anchor your success or what's happening in the search with actual numbers that can make sense to logical and thinking people. And it is possible. I've done it hundreds of times with candidates, and you are no different. We can make it happen.
All right. Well, thank you so much, my friend Nicole. And I would love it if you could jump into the LinkedIn chat. There may be some folks leaving comments that we didn't get to today, or there might be a couple of questions out there as well, if that'd be okay with you.
Of course. We'll do it.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. Take care.
Bye, everybody.